In the name of God, most merciful, ever merciful, and may God's peace and blessings be upon His holy Prophet Muhammad and his progeny and household. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Brothers, sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So this is going to be the last lesson in our mini-series on the special prophethood, or the prophethood of the Prophet of Islam, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa. And this lesson has to do with this character that we hear about him, which is called in Arabic al-Khatamiyya. So the best translation for it is just to say the seal of prophethood, Khatam al-Anbiya, and we'll talk about what that means. But generally speaking, this is going to be to a large extent Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah. This is going to be an extension or a continuation of the topic that we began the last time we had a lesson, which was Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah. So we said that we're going to talk about two topics in the last lesson, which was the universality of the message of the Holy Prophet, so that it's a universal message that applies to all of humanity, as well as the eternal character of Islam, so that it's good for all times, all future times following the revelation. And so today we want to continue with that topic, but now we want to look at specifically the prophethood of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is usually referred to as al-Khatamiyya. So this lesson is designed to finish this topic, to close off this topic, and inshallah we will be successful in setting the stage to begin the new series once this one is done, the series of Imamate. So inshallah we'll make that transition very clear at the end of this lesson. This lesson is built with the introduction, and then the author jumps right into the Quranic proofs and then the narrational proofs for saying that the Holy Prophet is Khatam al-Anbiya, the last of the prophets, the seal of prophets. And of course, at the end of it, he gives a little bit of an explanation. He adds a few more points on why is this valid, why do we say that this is the last of prophets, and a few points around that. And then there's an answer to an objection that may be asked around the topic that we present in this lesson. So the quick recap until now for this series. We began by establishing the prophethood of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we said that there is three big ways to establish the prophethood of someone. We study their character, we rely on prophecies from previous prophets in whom we rely, and we consider their prophecies to be valid. And thirdly, we look at their claim and their miracle. And very quickly we went through the first two, and then we spent a little bit of time on the third of the aspects of proving, establishing the prophethood of the Holy Prophet, which is the miracle of the Quran. And we looked at the Holy Quran from two angles. The first being, what do we mean when we say that the Quran is a miracle? So the miraculous nature, the miraculous aspect of the Holy Quran. And from another point of view, we looked at the Quran to establish its authenticity. To what extent can we consider this to be the valid original that was revealed to the Holy Prophet that we still have in our hands today? So with that, we should have already established to anyone following from the beginning until now the validity of the claim of the Holy Prophet as a prophet, and the validity of his miracle as the Quran as his main message to humanity, with the core tenets, with the core teachings and beliefs well established in the Quran, and the Quran being the original as it was revealed by the Holy Prophet to the rest of humanity. In other words, by now we should have clearly established that Islam is a true religion. The next question that we're now trying to answer, and so this is what we began in the last lesson, and we're going to finish it today. Someone may come and say, okay, so the Holy Prophet is a prophet and his teachings are true, and the Quran is a valid miracle as well as a valid revelation to human beings. who says that there was nothing that has been revealed to humanity since then? Who says that this is going to be the only valid claim to religion, a valid religion, from the time of that revelation until the end of times? So someone may come now and say, I'm a prophet of God. So what do we do with this new aspect, with the novelty aspect? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So until now what we've clearly established, so it should be clear that the Holy Prophet's claim to prophethood is valid, the miracle that he presented is valid, Islam is a valid religion, but we have not closed the door yet on the claim, if someone makes it, that there is a revelation that has taken place, or there's a prophethood that will be announced after the prophethood of the Holy Prophet. So we began this topic by saying that we're going to look at it from two angles. Angle one is to establish the universality, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, the universal or the universality of the message of Islam, so that it is valid, so that it applies to any human being. And then the second topic, or the second dimension of that message, is to look at it from a temporal aspect and say, in time, even if we continue in time, this is going to be an applicable message, an applicable revelation to human beings. So in the last lesson we talked about the universality of the message, and we talked about the finality of the message. And we said, for that second point, the finality of this is the final message, or an eternal message to humanity. We said the author split it in two parts. So we talked about the first part in the last lesson, and in this lesson we're talking about the second part. And this time we're going to look at it from this new angle, which is very well known in Islam, called Al-Khatamiyya as a topic. Al-Khatamiyya basically meaning that the Holy Prophet is Khatam al-Anbiya, the seal of prophets. And we're going to talk about that and what does that actually mean. So generally speaking, when we say that there were prophets who were sent to humanity before, we had instances where we find that a prophet is sent with a message to humanity, and there's another prophet, also a valid, authentic prophet, who is there with human beings, sometimes at the same time as that prophet, and at other times coming afterwards. For example, if we want to follow the stories of the Quran, we know, for instance, that Prophet Lut alayhi salam was there at the same time as Prophet Ibrahim. So both of them are prophets. So which one are you supposed to follow? And how do you know that both are actually coming with a valid claim to prophethood? A lot of this we've already covered. Another scenario very similar to this one is if you look at the history of Bani Israel, the Israelites, you'll see that many prophets were sent to them. Perhaps thousands of prophets were sent to them. None of them were being sent with a completely new religion. In the majority of cases, or the cases that we're aware of, these are an application or an instance of continuing the same religion that was revealed to Prophet Musa alayhi salam. So the question here is, how do we know that this is not going to be the case with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How do we know that there's no one else? No one is now questioning, after everything we've said, no one should question that Prophet Muhammad is a true prophet and that his message is a true message. That part is now well established. And that's why we can rely on the Quranic proofs now. But someone may claim and say, while your prophet is a true prophet, a genuine prophet with an authentic message from God, there's also this other person who's also a prophet and I want to follow them. And they may be at the same time as the Holy Prophet, as some attempts were made during the time of the Holy Prophet by others to say, I'm also a prophet. And this may be after the Holy Prophet. So who says if someone comes 100 years or 200 years or 10 centuries after the Prophet and says, I'm a prophet, God is also speaking to me, revealing a message to me that I have to communicate to humanity. How do I know that this person are they saying the truth or not? So our claim until now has been that Islam is supposed to be the last That's why we said it's eternal. It's supposed to be valid until the end of times. So what goes hand in hand with that argument, if it is true that Islam is the religion that is universal to all human beings, and the religion that will be eternal to the rest of times until the end of times for humanity, then logically what this should mean is what we're trying to establish today, that there should be no other prophethoods that are sent to humanity afterwards. That's the logic of the lesson and the architecture of the argument. So what we need to do is to look specifically into this aspect of the argument, which is, can there be a prophet sent after Prophet Muhammad or not? And so to use the term that goes with that, to summarize that entire topic, we say al-Khatamiyya. Okay, so if you ever hear the word Khatamiyya, that's what we're referring to. That he is the seal or the last of the prophets. So the first thing is, before we even get into the argument, the author tells us, and the majority of the authors build their argument this way about al-Khatamiyya. They say that, as we said when we talked about the universality of the message and when we talked about the eternal aspect of Islam, we said that since the beginning of Islam, it has been a unanimous claim of Islam when it presents itself to the world that it is a universal religion, that it is an eternal religion. And what goes hand in hand with all of this is that the Holy Prophet is the last of prophets. And this actually has a practical application that we talked about when we first started the lessons on theology. We said that in every belief system, in every ideology and belief system, you have things that are, in Arabic they say it's daruri. It's a necessary belief. And at that time when we presented it, we said it's like there is a sphere with a definition. If you meet that definition, you are either in the sphere, and if you don't meet that definition, you're outside of that sphere. There are conditions. One of the conditions of being a Muslim, that's what we mean when we say something is considered unanimous in Islam. There is a unanimous claim in Islam, so every Muslim and every non-Muslim who has studied Islam should also know this. There's a claim that the Holy Prophet is the last of prophets. So the practical application of this means that if you say the Holy Prophet is the Prophet of God, and I do believe in his message, but I also believe that there's a prophet that was sent after him, you're not in that sphere. In other words, you're not a Muslim. Okay, you've excluded yourself. There's a check mark that you're missing. The believing in the Holy Prophet as the seal of prophethood, as the seal of all prophets, is part of your belief in Islam. So it's daruri. Okay, so generally speaking, the classic position in Islam is, and all Muslims are unanimous on this, not believing that the Holy Prophet is the last of prophets will exclude you from the full belief in Islam. You're not a full Muslim, in other words. Okay? So that's what we mean when we say we don't need an additional proof. Because by this time, you should have believed in his prophethood and that Islam is a valid religion. So if you believe in those two, I should not add a new argument for you to make you also believe that this is the last of the prophets. Okay? So this is the first part of the topic. Now, to this, of course, there are things that we have in our religion that will support this claim. And we're going to come back to a point of why there is no real rational argument that can be presented here to establish that the Holy Prophet is the last of prophets. We talked about it last time and we'll talk about it again today, a little bit later. But you'll notice that the author right away jumps from this introduction, the one that we just gave, and so here are the Quranic arguments to establish that the Holy Prophet is the last of prophets. So we're not providing any rational argument here. Okay, we haven't done this until now. So he gives only one verse from the Holy Quran. There's a few others, but this is the verse in the Quran that explicitly talks about this. And it says in Arabic, مَا كَانَ مُحَمَّدٌ أَبَا أَحَدٍ مِّن رَجَالِكُمْ وَلَكِنْ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ وَخَاتَمَ النَّبِيِّينَ. So in English, Muhammad is not the father of any man among you, but he is the apostle of God or the messenger of Allah and the seal of the prophets. And Allah has knowledge over all things. this verse, and this is not the place to give the full commentary of this verse, the context that this verse was revealed in, very quickly, is that one of the things that the Arabs believed in, that society believed in, that Islam was trying to break away from, is that they believe that if you adopt someone, they become your son as though they are your son biologically. And Islam does not accept that. Islam distinguishes very clearly between someone you raise, you adopt and raise, and someone who is your blood, biological son. So there was a man that the Holy Prophet had raised. His name was Zayd ibn Haritha, and the Holy Prophet raised him. And so Islam, to show how this is supposed to be applied in real life, asked the Holy Prophet to demonstrate it, to apply it. So it applied to the Holy Prophet himself, just like all the other men who had adoptive sons, the Holy Prophet had an adoptive son. And so the Quran in this verse, and there are other verses that talk about this, and inshallah one day we'll get into those details, but in this verse, this was the initial context. The verse is teaching the Muslims not to refer to the Holy Prophet as the man of any of your men, the father of any of your men. He's not his father. Even though he has adopted him and raised him, do not refer to him as his father. So, then what do I refer to him as? Refer to him as the messenger of Allah and the seal of the prophets. So this is the general context of this verse. So the point is not more the social context, but just so that we know why does the verse start with مَا كَانَ مُحَمَّدٌ أَبَا أَحَدٍ مِّن رَجَالِكُمْ. Muhammad was never the father of any of your men. Okay, so this is more the social context. But the point that we need for our purposes here is the second part. So what do I call the Prophet if I can't call him the father of this man? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, you call him the messenger of Allah, Rasul Allah, or Khatam al-Nabiyyin. Okay, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. So this part should be clear. Now some people have tried to object to this verse. And there are two big objections, and we'll go through them. The first one is they say the term Khatam does not necessarily mean that the Holy Prophet is the last of prophets. So very quickly what they say, and this is actually in some tafasir, but this is usually more of, sometimes people don't know that this is an attack, but it's often an attack against the Khatamiyya of the Holy Prophet. That there is a way to use the word Khatam. Khatam basically means a ring. Metaphorically or symbolically, what it could mean is that it's something you ornament yourself with, you beautify yourself with. So to make myself more beautiful, I'll wear a ring. So they say the other possible meaning to this verse is that the Holy Prophet is this ornament of all prophets. He is the beauty, the most beautiful one of all prophets. Okay, there is something beautiful in there, no doubt about it. But the verse is not saying that. Why? How did they come to consider this? The beauty part is the symbolic metaphor that was understood afterwards. Initially, Khatam means a ring. But how did it come to mean a ring? It came to mean a ring because they used to use their rings to seal a letter.
It's like a signet ring.
Exactly. So for me to use my ring, the reason I need a ring is because if I send a message to someone, I want to make sure that that message reaches them fully, completely, no one tampers with it, and they know that no one tampered with it. So I seal it with wax, I close it off, and I put my insignia, and I put my signature, my name, whatever, on my ring. And we even have in our narrations about the history of the Holy Prophet, some of the letters that he sent to some of the kings and the heads of tribes and others, he was told in that area, it would be much better if you sent it to them with your seal. And that's when he took a seal for himself, he took a ring and he wrote on it, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, and they would put the wax with his ring on it so that this became his official signature. All of this to say what? All of this to say that even though the word may have this symbolic meaning of ornament and beauty, or the more material meaning of ring, even if it means ring, what it really refers to is when you want to seal and finalize something. That's the real meaning of khatm. And it became used, it came to be known as a ring or a ornament, a beauty, an item of beauty. But the real meaning was to seal something in the sense of finalizing it, making it complete, closing it off. So even in that sense, if you want to be more literal about the way to understand the verse is still saying that the Holy Prophet is the seal of prophethood. That chain of prophethood is sealed with the Holy Prophet. Yeah.
So even just as maybe a quick question on that, for the literal sense, would it also be possible to use the verse of Khatamullah ala qulubihim in the sense that if it was just a ring to beautify it, the Quran would not use that word?
Agreed 100%. Yeah.
Right? So you can just, the Quran doing the tafsir of the Quran.
It's actually a point that opens the whole door, which is very quickly just something to keep in mind about this whole topic of how does the Quran use the Arabic language? Does it use synonyms or not? Is it extremely accurate in the sense that if it uses two terms or a term in two places, does it necessarily mean that there's something true in both places to the term like you just did? Because you're being very accurate with the terminology, and that's a very big theory. And there are increasingly now, there are some of our scholars or scholars who are spending a lot of time studying the Holy Quran who are concentrating on this specifically to try to see if the Quran uses a term here and another term that generally speaking Arabs consider a synonym of it, they're saying it's not a synonym. These two don't mean the same thing. Otherwise the Quran would have used the same term. But it didn't, therefore there's another meaning. So why did the Quran use, why here did the Quran say imra'ah, or and here nisa, here it's zawja, here it's, what's the difference? What is it trying to emphasize? Or ba'al, rajul, zawj, for instance. That's one example, and there are many others. The same thing can be said here. So based on that theory, if you use that theory, and I do believe that the Quran is extremely meticulous in how it uses its terms, then of course khatm here and khatm here or khatam here have a similar root, therefore the similar common thread that applies to both, of course. So that was the first objection. Is it possible that the verse is not referring to the Holy Prophet as the seal, as in the final? We said no. So that objection doesn't work because the verse does not mean it's an ornament like a ring. The verse really means to seal the chain of prophethood with the Holy Prophet. He is the seal. The second objection that is sometimes used, and this one is weaker than the first, is that they say, okay, we'll agree that he is the seal of prophethood, but there might be messengers sent after. So the verse says, Khatam al-Nabiyyin, the last of the prophets. It doesn't say the last of the messengers. So someone else may be sent, and that person is a messenger, not a prophet. So they're trying to play on the distinction between prophethood, the chain of prophethood, and the chain of messengers. The quick answer to this one, we gave it, and we can spend more time on it or not. I think this, in short, is very, very sufficient. What we said is, generally speaking, we can say as a general rule that every messenger is a prophet, but not every prophet is a messenger. Or to say it differently, being a messenger is simply a much higher rank than being a prophet. So they're all prophets, but once they reach a certain level, that's one version, or when there's additional duties given to their prophethood, that makes them a messenger. That makes them a Rasul. If those duties are not given to them, they remain only a prophet. So if the verse is saying he is the last of prophets, that would include being the last of all prophets as well as the last of all messengers. So no one can come and say, he may not be the last of all messengers. Otherwise the verse would have said, he is the last of all messengers. And had the verse said that, then someone would come and say, the verse doesn't say he's the last of prophets, and there could be others who are prophets, and that would be a valid argument. Because there's much fewer messengers than there are prophets. Okay, so that part is clear, inshallah. So these are the two big objections against this verse, and as you can see, they're both not very strong. So the verse says, he is the seal, the last of all prophets, and the word does actually mean that he is the final one, the one that closes that chain. That's one. And two, if the verse says he's the last of prophets, no one should come and say, but it doesn't mean that he's also the last of messengers. Messengers and prophets are the same chain. Messengers are more specific. It's a smaller circle within prophethood. So prophethood is more general, and within that we have messengers. And here we talked about this. I just put L29, that's lesson 29. We talked about this topic in a little bit more detail in general prophethood towards the end. So beyond the Quranic proof, we also have hundreds upon hundreds of narrations, ahadith, that also establish that the Holy Prophet is the seal of prophethood, the last of all prophets and messengers. So at the beginning we have, for instance, there's a number of narrations. For instance, O people, the Holy Prophet talks to his people. He tells them, O people, there is no prophet after me, and there is no nation, there is no ummah. So here nation doesn't mean just nation, it means a nation belonging to a prophet. Right? That's how the Quran uses ummah. So there is no nation after you. So basically I'm the last of prophets, and you're the last of nations belonging to a prophet. Okay, so that's one narration. We have another one that says, there is no sunnah after my sunnah. So there will be no other tradition. So a tradition is the manner in which a prophet lives. So everything they say, everything they do, everything they don't do, how they eat, how they sleep, all of that is a tradition of a prophet. The manner in which they lived and what they said. And the Holy Prophet says, there will be no tradition after my tradition. After my sunnah, there is no more sunnah. Which means it's the last of the sunan of the prophets. And a number of other verses, of other narrations the same way. There's a narration, for instance, it's called, I'm referring to it here as the narration of the brick. So the Holy Prophet says, he explains this to some of his companions. He tells them, my example among the prophets is like someone who built a beautiful house brick by brick. And anyone who comes to that house, they see how beautiful it is, except that there is one brick missing in that house, and I am that brick. So there's a lot of comments that we can take out from this. One of them is to view prophethood as one unit. We shouldn't be looking at the Holy Prophet as by himself. So the Holy Prophet is part of something bigger, which is the chain of prophethood, and that chain would have been missing, incomplete, if the Prophet is not there with his part. Okay, so that's one. The other one is that this chain perfects itself, completes itself. So this becomes an additional argument for the finality, eternity, seal of prophethood argument. But this would require that we say that everything that you have in the previous religions, the wisdom, the knowledge, all these teachings have been encompassed here, and they have been perfected. And we also have narrations from the Holy Prophet where he talks about this, right? Where he says, I've only been sent to perfect virtues and manners, for instance. So it was all there, but I come to make them perfect, make them complete. That's it. So with that, we are also getting another argument to say, so this must be the last, because he's made them perfect. There's nothing else to add. There are no more bricks, there are no more gaps. That's it. It's all been sealed. And then we have Hadith al-Manzila, the narration of the rank. And there's a long story that we're not going to get into right now, but we were told that in Ma'rakat Tabuk, in one of the battles of the Holy Prophet, when they left, the Holy Prophet asked Imam Ali alayhi salam to stay behind. And Imam Ali alayhi salam got very sad and he cried. So when the Holy Prophet heard, he came back to talk to him. Imam Ali alayhi salam thought that maybe there is something wrong, or maybe he's going to be missing out, he's not going to be there to protect the Holy Prophet as usual, so on and so forth. So the Holy Prophet came back to Imam Ali alayhi salam afterwards, and he told him very small, very few words, but they carry a lot of meaning, and so it became known as Hadith al-Manzila. The Holy Prophet tells Imam Ali alayhi salam, does it not please you, that's all he said, it's not a long sermon, does it not please you to be to me as Harun was to Musa, except that there is no prophet after me. So here there's two ways to do this. Either I look at this narration from the Holy Prophet and I say, so in which ways was Harun related to Musa? And I try to list a few, okay? Or I do it by exception. And I think the real way to do it is by exception. What do we mean? The Holy Prophet says what the only thing that is different between them is, right, in the same sermon, in the same hadith. He tells him, you are exactly to me as Harun was to Musa, with the one exception that there is no prophet after me. So that's the one angle that we have to exclude. So you're not a prophet. Prophet Harun was a prophet and Prophet Musa was a prophet. But what else is very significant? Well, they were brothers. They were blood brothers. And the Holy Prophet is telling him, you are to me as Harun was to Musa. And that's one topic. Another very significant topic is when the Quran talks about Prophet Harun and Prophet Musa, what does it say? It's very, when you're talking about the meticulousness of the Holy Quran and how it uses the terms. At some point, Prophet Musa alayhi salam was supposed to go meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, go receive a message from Allah on his own. When he does that, the Quran says, when he went to receive the covenant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he told his brother Harun, وَقَالَ لِأَخِيهِ هَارُونَ خْلُفْنِي فِي قَوْمِي, become my Khalifa over my people in my absence. When I'm not there, you're the one who succeeds to me when I'm not there. This is, you want to see the term, the accurate term used by the Quran, says أُخْلُفْنِي فِي قَوْمِي, become my Khalifa over my people. So the Holy Prophet is telling Imam Ali alayhi salam, does it not please you to have that relationship with me? Is that not enough? So there's no problem in you, there's no issue in you, there's no gap, you haven't done anything wrong. That's not why I'm leaving you behind in Tabuk. I'm leaving you behind just like Prophet Musa left Prophet Harun to clearly show who is the successor when I'm not there. Yeah.
Would another similarity also be how the Ummah betrayed Harun?
Yeah.
The same way the Ummah betrayed.
Of course. And we have narrations from Imam Ali alayhi salam where he explains that in detail. When he comes to the holy grave of the Holy Prophet alayhi salam, and he talks to him and he repeats the verses that Prophet Harun said. We have the same words in the Quran when Prophet Harun spoke to Prophet Musa alayhi salam when he came back and he saw what had happened to Bani Israel. And he took his brother aside, alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullah. So he took his brother aside. He was angry or disappointed. He's like, what is this? What has happened? Why are these people in this state? And he tells him, these people have considered me weak. استضعفوني وكادوا أن يقتلونني. They were about to kill me. These same, we have narrations where the Imam Ali alayhi salam comes to the Holy Prophet's grave and he repeats the same ones. And we have other narrations from the Holy Prophet where he explains this. So there's absolutely a complete alignment here between the two. Excellent point. We also have narrations from the Holy Prophet and from the Imam alayhi salam. If we go back to general ad'iyah, and we go back to general ziyarat, where it is clearly stated again and again that the Holy Prophet is the seal of prophets. He is the last of prophets in his own ziyarah as well as the general ziyarat that we have. And then there is two more them adding here, but they're not in the lesson, but at least we mentioned them quickly. We did mention a number of narrations before, especially in the last lesson. So for instance, we said from Imam al-Baqir, Imam al-Sadiq, there's a number of narrations that say the halal of Muhammad is halal until the day of judgment, the haram of Muhammad is haram until the day of judgment, in different wording, but the meaning is the same. Of course, those can be used to establish that he is the seal of prophets as well. Otherwise, there would be something that would come to change that. Okay? And then the last point that is not mentioned here, but if you go back to, let's say, the stories of previous prophets or their sayings, you will find in there that they clearly prophesied that there will be a prophet who will come after, and he will be, and his characteristics of course match entirely those of Prophet Muhammad, and that he will be the last of the prophets, the last of all prophets, the last of messengers and the last of prophets. So the lesson does not address this, but this is just another source for the narrations. And then I thought I'd just mention three quickly from Nahj al-Balagha, where Imam Ali alayhi salam, and there are many others. These are three instances. So in the first sermon he talks about the Holy Prophet being the last of prophets. Allah never allowed his creation to remain without a prophet deputized by him, or a book sent down from him, or a binding argument or a standing plea. These messengers were such that they did not feel little because of smallness in their number, or of largeness of the number of their falsifiers. Among them was either a predecessor who would name the one to follow, or a follower who had been introduced by the predecessor. In this way, ages passed by and times rolled on. Fathers passed away while sons took their places, till Allah deputized Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as his prophet in fulfillment of his promise and in completion of his prophethood. Okay, so that's in the first sermon where Imam Ali alayhi salam is clearly saying that this is with the sending of the Holy Prophet, Prophet Muhammad, the chain of prophethood is now complete. Allah completed the chain of prophethood with the Holy Prophet. That's one sermon. In Sermon 133, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, Allah deputized the Prophet after a gap from the previous prophets when there was much talk, so basically disagreement between people. With him, so with the Holy Prophet, Allah exhausted the series of prophets and ended the revelation. And then we have in Sermon 234, and this is very short in Nahj al-Balagha. This is basically what the Imam Ali alayhi salam was saying while he was washing the body of the Holy Prophet when he passed away, and performing the rituals of death on the body of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, may my father and my mother be a ransom for you. That which has ceased with you or with your death never ceased with the death of anyone else. And then he explains what it is. So there's something that now that the Holy Prophet passed away, there is something that stopped, that had never stopped before, but because of his death, that thing stopped, which is the direct revelation to humanity, because he was the last of prophets. So Imam Ali alayhi salam realizes what that really means. People like us, we don't realize what that means, but Imam Ali alayhi salam knows what that means, that the Holy Prophet, with his death, humanity has entered a new age, an age where there's no longer the revelation that God was sending to humanity to guide them. That is gone. It's over. So he says that which ceased with your death had never ceased with the death of anyone before you. Okay, so that's how special you are, O Holy Prophet. And he says prophethood, revelation, and the affairs of heaven. That's it. Everything is now cut off because there's no more prophethood. So here the author is going to add a few points that are relevant to this topic to close it off. He calls this part of the lesson, he calls it the secret of sealing prophethood. Or in other words, what is this philosophy behind? How can we say that prophethood is sealed? We want to really understand it. So we have to go back to the same lesson, lesson 29, when we talked about the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends multiple prophets. Why are multiple prophets sent in the first place? Why isn't one prophet sent or one message sent to humanity and that's the end of that? And we gave three big reasons. We said the first of these reasons is if we look at the manner, especially in the past, and the manner in which communication was taking place in humanity, we know that it was very difficult. There's no information and communication technologies that we have today. There's no electricity, no internet, no social media. How are you supposed to communicate something, a message, in an accurate manner from one land to another? So that becomes one of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends multiple prophets, because that communication is very difficult. So a lot more is needed. Every area needs their own prophet. But as humanity evolves and they create means to communicate with each other, there's less and less need for these prophets to be sent, until you reach a point where anything that is communicated or that's happening anywhere in the world may be seen as is anywhere else in the world. Okay, so that's one argument. One reason why there were a lot of prophets. Second reason, we said that if you look at the context of human beings, you see that it's constantly changing, and generally speaking, it's an evolution. It's improving, and it's becoming more complex. Which means what? Which means that one set of teachings may have been sufficient for humanity to be spiritually guided at some point, but the complexity of their life, the complexity of their thinking, the complexity of their social interactions, and so on and so forth, requires more delicate, more detailed, more sophisticated teachings to allow them to deal with the reality of their worlds. And so a new prophet needs to be sent with additional or different teachings. That was the second reason we gave. And the third reason, and it's not a small one, is that we know, and we talked about this, that a lot of distortions have happened to the teachings of the prophets. Some of them, unfortunately, are direct and intentional. There are people who have intentionally modified, distorted, omitted, added to the revelations and the teachings of the prophets. And in some cases, it's as a result of ignorance or negligence or that teaching never makes it. Or it becomes distorted. So a part of it goes missing, and because it's incomplete, the meaning changes, for instance. So in all of these cases, the message is no longer there for humanity to be using it for its guidance. For these three big reasons, and there are others, but these are the three big ones that we talked about, we said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps sending new prophets. This was for general prophethood, and then we need to apply that to the prophethood of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if we take this, every time we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His knowledge and in His wisdom, He sees some of these factors play out, He knows when He needs to intervene with a new type of guidance to humanity, which is sending a prophet with new teachings. If we come to the message of the Holy Prophet ﷺ and we look at these three criteria and we want to apply them, for the first one, the difficulty of communication, the Holy Prophet is sent at a point in time when that communication is a lot better. And today, let us say if something needs to be communicated today, you can see how much easier and faster and more accurately you can communicate it than before. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that time sees that the communication that is being given to the Prophet may start spreading through him and the people who follow him, and inshallah we'll get into the topic of imamah, with the imams who will come after him. That communication will be sufficient for humanity. The reason we're saying all of this is maybe a caveat, a note. The reason we're saying this is so that no one comes and says, but what's the difference? Humanity is changing, and we'll get back to that, just like it has always been changing. The context is always changing. The same reason that should have made Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that made Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send multiple prophets before, should also make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep sending prophets now. Really, that's the objection. So here what we're saying, so the secret, the author is trying to explain the philosophy of the sealing of prophethood. So he's saying if we look at the three big factors, the communication, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must have seen, must have considered in His knowledge that this message that He's communicating to the Prophet is now going to be in a state, at a point in humanity, given the people around the Prophet, given the manner in which the Prophet is going to communicate it to the people around him, that that message is going to reach everyone it's supposed to reach at the time it's supposed to reach them. That's one. Two, the changing context. So the claim here is that this is going to be universal and applicable to any context and any circumstances that you could face as a community, as followers of the Holy Prophet. And three, and that was, we spend enough time on this, we're going to ensure that there are no distortions to this message. And so long as that message is preserved as is, so long as that message can be communicated far and wide as it's supposed to, and so long as that message is going to be applicable to anyone who gets it, then there's no need to send more prophets. The reason why more prophets needed to be sent does not work anymore. It's no longer a driver. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need to intervene with new prophets and new teachings. Okay? Two more points related to this, and this is important, and I mentioned it at the beginning, and we're finishing with this. We have to emphasizing the fact that just based on your human reason, none of us, no human being will ever be able to look at these factors. So for instance, can this message actually be communicated in the right way? One. Two, what about the context? Is this message, is this set of teachings, is it going to be sufficient for all the different permutations, for all the different possibilities, alternatives, anything that may come up in that type of society or not? If I need a new set of teachings, then I will send them. Two, so there's the if, and then there's the when. So change is happening in society. Who is going to determine that this is enough change and therefore we need a new prophet? And who is going to determine when that's enough change? So there's if society is evolving, society is changing. Has it changed enough to require a new prophet? One. And two, okay, we agree that change is always happening. So when does it happen? Does it happen now? Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala need to send a prophet now, or does He need to send him in 500 years? Where is this paradigm shift? Where is this big transformation in society that requires a new prophethood, a new set of teachings? When does that happen? And so our claim, what we keep saying, and it's a very important point, is that no human being, based on the reason, no matter how much analysis you do, are you going to be able to say, and this is the point where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs to send a new prophet. It's impossible. And I touched a little bit on this in the last lesson, and what I said is, what we may do, and sometimes we do, because we want to rationalize everything, after the fact, I look at the history of humanity, and I can say, yeah, I understand why at that point Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have wanted to send Prophet Musa alayhi salam with that type of new religion. And why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have wanted to send Prophet Isa alayhi salam at that point with those miracles to those people. That's after the fact. But for me sitting here, not knowing what the future looks like, not knowing the context of every human being on earth, and every society on earth, and how they interact with each other, and where the trends are going in the future, I can't just say humanity needs a new religion or humanity doesn't need a new religion. The only reason why I can say that there's not going to be another religion sent is because God told me. Otherwise, sitting from my limited perspective, maybe some of us would say, yeah, maybe we're due for a new prophet, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can see that humanity has evolved and changed so much. We have gone into a completely new age, let's say because of science and technology, because of the complexity of life, so on and so forth. To say that it would be valid, it seems justified that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would send a prophet now. If you want to use your reason, you may say, yeah, it looks like it's a good time, or no, it's not a good time. But you have nothing to rely on. You have a very limited perspective. And this is where we say, you do not have a rational argument to establish, that's why I started with this. And I said, there is no rational argument to say that the Holy Prophet is the last of prophets. How do I know? I can't know that this needs to be the last of prophets. The only way I know that is if He tells me, or if God tells me, and this is now going to be sufficient for you until the end of times. And if He tells me that, then I know that He has given me the tools, and now I have to work with them to make them work for my reality. Okay, so that's the first point. The second point is, when we say that the Holy Prophet is the seal of prophethood, Khatam al-Nabiyyin, Khatam al-Nubuwah, that there is no more Nubuwah, no more prophethood after the Prophet, this does not mean there is no more divine guidance for humanity. And inshallah, when we talk about Imamah, we will continue on that topic. So I'm not going to say more here. But what we're saying is that there is no more prophethood, which is different from saying that there is no more divine guidance to humanity. Prophethood means that someone comes to you and says, I have a message from God to you. With the seal of prophethood, it means there is no more of that. No one is going to come to you ever again after the Holy Prophet and say, God has sent me with a message to you. He says, you have to do this and you cannot do that. No more of that. But does it mean that there's no more divine guidance? No. And so we'll talk about that inshallah when we talk about Imamah. Let's finish with this. So based on everything we said, someone may have this objection. So we touched on it, but now we want to present it as an objection. Until now, our conclusion is what? The first point is, the Holy Prophet ﷺ has communicated a set of teachings, which we call a religion, to humanity. He is a real prophet, and what he has communicated to humanity is a real message from God. So this part should be clear, established and accepted. The communication that the Holy Prophet has brought to humanity has remained in its original form, authentic, since the time he has explained it and communicated it to humanity until now. That's the second part that should be clear. The third part, where the objection is, so anyone who should have been following with us from the beginning should agree with those 2 points. The third point is, they go back to the philosophy of the multiplicity of nubuwah, multiplicity of prophets. Why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept sending all these prophets? Because humanity needs a new set of teachings. Humanity needs a divine intervention for its spiritual guidance. Because its life, because its world is getting more complex or changing. Too much for the set of teachings that were there before. Or possibly because they were distorted and lost. So the objection is, well, this is still the case today. If anyone looks at the trend, the history of humanity, we see that it's always evolving and it's always changing. And if it changed before, it's changing now, and it will continue to change in the future. So for that same reason, we should expect more prophets. And it's okay to be open, at least, to consider the prophethood of other people. Okay? So that's the main objection. And that's why I said these are 3 conclusions. The problem is the third conclusion. When we say an Islam is good now and forever, because it will meet all the needs of humanity going forward, from the time it was revealed until the end of times. That's the claim. That's the Muslim claims that that's the case. The objection is specifically about this. They say, no, just like previous religions were not sufficient, they needed to be renovated, they needed to be supplemented, complemented with something more. Islam is also going to fall in the same category, in the same situation. What makes it different from any other revelation and religion? The answer. The first point is the one that we just presented, which is, we have just said and explained that determining when humanity requires a new prophet, determining when humanity requires a new religion, is beyond human capacity, beyond human reason. A human being cannot just sit back and try to analyze the context and say, yeah, we're due for a new prophet now. You know, the economic environment, the political environment, the technological environment equals new prophet. We can't do that. So if the objection is stemming from your human reason that we're due for a new prophet, it doesn't work. It has never worked in the past and will never work in the future. Human reason cannot determine when humanity is due for a new prophet. Okay? So that's first part of the answer. Second part of the answer. Sometimes the changes that we're talking about are a little exaggerated. Something was revealed to the Holy Prophet, he communicated that to humanity. Someone may look at it now and say the world has changed so much that we need a new religion. Let's scrap the one we have and put something new in place. No. There's a lot in what was revealed that was revealed in a way, it was presented in a way to humanity as this is fixed. Nothing is going to change in that. For example, things that we consider morals. Morals are morals. Whether it was 10,000 years ago or 10,000 years in the future, humanity is always going to appreciate and respect, for instance, loyalty and truth and lean towards beauty and like justice. These things are never going to change. And this represents a very large part of religion. That's one. Two, there are things that are related to the social realities of human beings. For example, that human beings are social creatures who, for instance, live in this unit called a family, who will be born from parents. And so when Islam comes and says, and this is how you're going to deal with your parents, and this is how you're going to deal with your siblings, and this is how you're going to deal with your children, this is not going to change. Okay? So these are things that are considered fixed because of human nature, and we'll talk about human nature in a second. Laws. This is the easiest target. Laws need to change. Not all laws need to change, because a lot of them are anchored in the things that are fixed in human nature. When the Quran says, أَوْفُوا يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَوْفُوا بِالْعُقُودِ, respect, honor your contracts. Okay, so of course today's contract is going to be a little bit more sophisticated than the one written 14 centuries ago. But is it still a contract or not? It's still a contract. Which brings us to, and this is not in the lesson by the way, but I think we need to add it in there, that whole point that we just presented. Which is, we have to distinguish, not every part of religion is equal to every other part in religion. There are things that are fixed, these do not change. And there are things that are changeable, modifiable, depending on where you are, depending on the context, the circumstances, and all of that. So if the Quran says أَوْفُوا بِالْعُقُودِ, it's difficult for someone to come and say, given the changing context, we no longer need to apply أَوْفُوا بِالْعُقُودِ, honoring your contracts. No, the only thing that has changed is the complexity of the contract, and we believe that there's still enough in our religion to allow us to deal with the very sophisticated new contracts we have in place. Do not break your word. Be truthful. Keep up your word. Be loyal to what you say, and so on and so forth. That doesn't change. And the last one is because all of this is anchored in human nature. And this is the link that we're not going to emphasize now, but I'm hoping to put the seed in there in your minds. This is the link with this insistence in our religion about fitrah. The point of our religion is always to bring us back to our original fitrah, our true nature. It does not matter whether it's now or in 10,000 or a million years from now. Human beings have a certain, by creation, they have a certain nature. That nature is never going to change because you're a human being. Our religion, its purpose is to bring you back to that fitrah. If that point is understood, then you understand that no matter how much the world changes around you, your nature is not going to change. And how you come back to that nature is not going to change. It may become more complex, more sophisticated, but this is where we go to the next point. And this is what the author talks about. But I think we needed that little layer on top. This is where the author says, it's true that the world is changing. So now we're going back to the core of the objection, which is the world is always changing. Yeah, it's true that the world is changing. But if you look at Islamic teachings, we do have specific instances that have to do with everything that happens, but we also have general rules. We have abstract principles that are left to the scholars and to the people who understand Islam to come take back and apply. So instead of telling you, and this is how you're going to deal with the small chair and with the big chair and with the white chair and with the black chair, I'm going to give you a general rule on how to deal with chairs. And then you, as a specialist on chairs, you're now going to see how it applies there, where it applies and where it doesn't, right? And this is where you see that our religion emphasizes on this point of explaining to you the general principles that you need to apply. But to do that, you have to become an expert. And this takes you to the next point, which the author doesn't spend too much time on. This is where you start to see that our religion, that Islam, while it gives you these foundations that are fixed, that don't change, it puts in your hand general principles, and then it tells you how to apply them. But in order to apply them, it also must grant you the permission to do so, the confidence to do so, explains to you, this is where you play. As an expert, as someone who's allowed to use your ijtihad, this is the scope of your ijtihad. This is the scope of where you can use your reason to say, here it's fixed, I don't have any opinion here. Regardless of how much it changes around, this is a fixed item in religion, a fixed principle, a fixed law. And here, this is one where I have to adapt. I can change, I have to adapt, and I have the tools to do so. And hopefully you see that from there, and there's a lot of examples that we can give. For instance, our religion explains to us that here is the rule, here's the law that applies, and then sometimes it gives you the exception, it applies the exception for you, and sometimes it gives you the general rule, and it tells you if you are in a situation of obligation, of necessity, then of course you may break that law, you may break that rule. In any case, not just here, in any situation where you have to break away from that law. Okay, so it gives you that room. It tells you, for instance, where and where not to use your reason. What's the scope of your reason and where does your reason need to stop? It tells you, for instance, how to read the context. Which context counts? So when I look at the financial context, the social context, the political context, how do I apply all of that? It tells me, for instance, this is where we get into the specific roles. It starts to give roles and responsibilities to certain people in society. It says that judge, the person who plays the role of the judge in society, has a special position. And in that role, they have more leeway in making their decisions. But they have to be a real judge, competent, qualified in that role, and then they can apply the reason and see what's in the best interest. What's in the interest of the majority? What's the greater good? And they have to rule in that manner. And the link that I wanted to make from all of this is to say, and a lot of this may seem, and it is, in fact, abstract. And you can see where people might err a lot, might make huge mistakes because they're trying to see, and they determine that this is where I can use your reason, and because of a small mistake of, well, actually that's not where you used your reason, but they did, they can go completely astray or not. Well, maybe the life of the Holy Prophet, the 23 years where he taught this religion, maybe it was not sufficient to show you the full complexity of life as it was evolving. And maybe the way in which you can apply your reason and you can apply these general rules that Islam is giving you, you need a lot more examples, so that after a certain point of not having seen one or two examples, one or two cases in the life of the Holy Prophet, after you have seen 200 of them or 500 of them, because you've seen them over 200 years after the Holy Prophet, from people who rule in the exact same way and who think in the exact same way as the Holy Prophet, now you're confident to take that, and that becomes a way in which you can apply this religion until the end of times. And so inshallah, with this you see the clear transition to the next topic in this series, with the topic of imamah, inshallah. So this is going to be the segue, and we will stop here. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, we can take a couple of questions. If the sisters have any question. Brothers, and then we go to Hassan. So Ibrahim,
I'm outside of both genders. Yeah,
you're unique.
You're your own gender.
Ibrahim,
You're a special exception. Who was the last prophet before Prophet Muhammad? How long was it before Prophet Muhammad was sent?
So there are, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, clearly the big prophet before the Holy Prophet was Prophet Isa alayhi salam. But there are verses in the Quran that seem to indicate that there were some other prophets, including most likely in Surah Yasin, when you see these people sent to their people, 2 or 3 men sent to people. These may have been either companions of Prophet Isa alayhi salam or people who were sent after him. And then if you go back to some of our narrations, specifically the Shia narrations, you will see that there is a mention of some of the fathers or forefathers of the Holy Prophet who may have been prophets themselves, but they were not ordered to reveal that they were prophets. So they were guiding their tribes, they're guiding their clans, the people with whom they lived, but not necessarily revealing to people that they were prophets. And this becomes something that gives us a key to understand history. So not every prophet is going to say, I'm a prophet sent from God to you. They have to work within the mission that they are given. In some cases, they're not supposed to say, I'm a prophet, and in some cases, they have to say, I'm a prophet. Yeah, so this is an excellent question. But that's why still, in general, to humanity, and especially to the people living around the Holy Prophet, the general feeling, the impression of the majority of the people is that there is no prophet that has been sent for a while. And that's referred to as fatra. The Quran says, fatratin min ar-rusul. This is the gap we've mentioned a few times. There was a gap. For a while, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had not sent prophets.
Doesn't that go against not leaving humanity without guidance?
No, because there is enough out there for people to use. That's one.
Kind of like with what we have today.
Kind of like what we have today, but today is supposed to be different. But 2, your role, and inshallah we're going to come back to that depending on if we have one more session or not. 2 is, your role is to work with as best you can with what you have. And obviously, I'll give you a very simple example. For us today, obviously my knowledge of the Holy Quran, my knowledge of Islam, my knowledge of what I'm supposed to be doing, I assure you, I'm 100% convinced that it would not be what it is today. My knowledge today is different than if I was sitting right beside the Holy Prophet and I was asking him, what do I do? And from as simple as, am I doing the wudu correctly, to how am I praying, to how am I supposed to conduct myself in my life in general. For instance. So what does that mean? It means that even today, like it's easy to look at others and say, well, they're really, because they live in a remote area, because they have not had a prophet sent to them in a long time. But at the end, the bottom line for all of us is, given what you have been given, that's the best you can work with. And you are supposed to be the best person you can be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put this intuition inside you. You're supposed to recognize good and evil intuitively, and you have been given reason to understand that. And on top of that, I'm going to be sending you religion, and your job is to look at all of this and still be the best person you can be. And in some cases, you're very lucky because you happen to live at the same time as the Prophet, the same time as this Imam, because the same thing can be said about at any point in history. The person who's going to be with Prophet Nuh alayhi salam is going to complain that, is going to say that people who lived 2 generations before, well, Prophet Nuh alayhi salam was sent in some narrations, he was 850 years old when he was sent as a prophet. So what was happening before? Right? So that will always be an argument. And that's why we keep going back and saying, the job of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his duty, is not to have a prophet stand there answering Q&A, 24/7 for every human being all the time. It's to put enough guidance, and people are responsible to follow that in the best way they can. There's one more question.
Sayyid, you mentioned chair expert. Is this? I always tell Kareem this chair isn't comfortable. I always forget to ask you, is it comfortable?
It's okay, but it cracks a lot.
Yeah, there you go. See? Next question, Sayyid.
It has nothing to do with
He's being polite. Next question, Sayyid. You mentioned the extent of reason and when reason should be
applied.
Limited.
Yeah.
To the limits of reason. Where in our life do you feel we should not apply reason, if that exists? Is there a situation in our lives that you feel we should not, I really ask them.
Yeah, generally speaking, religion is sent for a purpose. And based on what we presented, we said that the real purpose of religion is to help you in those things that you have not been given the tools to do on your own. You don't know what's going to happen after you die. For instance. So anything related, anything that has an impact on what happens after you die, there's no place for a reason there. Unless, some human being has the capacity to go there, explore and do some lab work and come back and create theories and say this is how you're supposed to live. That will never happen, right? So this is where you see the limitations. Anything that has the spiritual dimension, anything that has the afterlife dimension, anything that has to do with the ghaib, anything that has to do with the unseen, the things that religion has taken upon itself to present to humanity, there's no place for reason there.
Forgive me, Sayyid, I think I wasn't clear. I don't mean where we should not apply reason philosophically and religiously. I mean, where should we not apply reason personally? When it comes, we always apply reason when it comes to our children, or our spouses, or our businesses. That's kind of maybe a bit away from the topic, but is there a limit to where it could be applied in our personal life?
It's a very difficult question because you're asking me my opinion.
Yeah, your opinion.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna give my opinion. That if I give my opinion, I'm gonna give it as part of a general theory of why that's my opinion. Because my opinion on its own doesn't mean anything. It needs to be part of why is that my opinion? The truth is, this is perhaps one of the areas of greatest research and intellectual activity right now going on in the Islamic world, within our madhab, and this is the topic that is usually referred to as al-thabit wal-mutaghayyir in fiqh. Okay, so the fixed and the changing. So one scholar will tell you that what's changing is a lot more, and this is where you have to apply your reason. And another scholar will tell you that changing is this, and this is where you apply your reason. And this becomes a matter of ijtihad. And that's why one scholar will say, the age of puberty or maturity of a male or a female is going to be this based on the ruwayat, and the other one is going to say those ruwayat are part of the changing, because that applied to that context for people living in the desert who are of that culture, and people living in today's world from a different culture, they're going to have a different age of maturity biologically. Whereas the other scholar is going to say absolutely not. This is a matter of worship. blind worship. Religion has told you where to do it, how to do it, and so you apply. But this becomes a matter of ijtihad, right? So this falls under, do you apply? Can you play with ijtihad here? Or does it become ta'abbud, blind worship, ritual? And this is going to fall on every aspect of life. So if you are someone who thinks, and this opens a whole door, that's why I'm saying it's a very big topic. If you are someone who thinks religion has covered every aspect of your life, so religion has told you how to sit and how to sleep and how to eat, how to comb your hair, how to wear your trousers, how, and because we do have narrations that talk about this, then of course you're going to say reason plays a much more limited room, because for every one of these questions, first go to religion and see what it says. And another scholar will say no. Religion wants you to apply your reason and to live your life in the best way you can based on what you know today. That's part of your struggle in life, is to explore the world, understand its laws, use science, do whatever you need to do, and come up with the best way to live your life. And here are the minimal things that we're giving you, the layer that we're going to give you, to make sure that your life is going to stay on track, so that your spiritual guidance is always going to be ensured. But that becomes a huge issue of contention between scholars and mujtahideen, that some of them are going to go one extreme and say reason everywhere, with the limitations being very few, and other scholars saying religion everywhere, ritual everywhere, blind faith, to use it that way, everywhere, and reason is very limited. And if that's the case, then you need to show me that everything you're talking about, because this is not the place for all of this, you need to show me that everything you're talking about is actually religion. Because all of this is really narration. And then that opens the door to, do you have reliable narrations in every aspect of that life that you're talking about? Are the narrations, for instance, in the medical field, Tibb al-Nabi and Tibb al-A'imma, for instance, that we have entire books written about, are they reliable or not? If your conclusion is they're not, then you can't say your religion talks that much about the details of Tibb, or what to eat and herbs and food. And if that's not there, and you're saying religion talks about everything, but you don't have details, then all you have are the general principles, which means a much larger scope for your reason. And this applies to how you raise your children, how you are with your spouse, how to start a business, how to go to school, everything. Right? It's going to open that whole door.
A very short question from our
Sure, yes.
Follow up with that, we say the scholars, the two types, one may be extreme and one may be more extreme and applied faith or narration, right?
Oh yeah.
Let's just go with that. Would you agree that towards the time today, is that to lean towards the scholars who have tried to apply more of a reason context, is it hard more than the traditional one? Because that's what I've been noticing personally.
No.
No, you think it's going to the extreme, honestly?
Yeah, the majority of scholars
and the majority
are...
I know that side. I'm saying leaning towards, many of them are moving towards that side. That's what I'm noticing about some. So I'm saying from your knowledge, from anybody you talk to, do you notice that as well?
No.
No, you still think that the majority or most of
the classic position is always going to be the religious position. Okay. And the moment you start using your reason, you're going to become controversial, because you're stepping outside of the prescribed rules that are very, once you know them, you just follow them, end of story. But if there's no prescribed rule for a field, then you have to come up with your own. And now what? Are you God? Are you religion? Who says that this is the right thing? You want to come up with your new economic system, your new political system, your new whatever system. It's a theory. This is your best shot, and the next who comes will say, completely wrong, this is my view.
The application of human reason becomes subjective, and that opens the door for more relativism down the road.
Exactly. Right? And this is why some say that this is very dangerous.
Exactly. You see that, right?
So and I mean, I simplified it to say there's two extremes. And there are extremes, but there's every shade of between, right? Yeah.
Okay.